All right. Hello. Uh, hello. I'm Nathaniel Smith, and today, well, welcome back to Bookcasting for starters. And I'm sorry it's been a while since I've made any sort of videos, but welcome. Today, I want to talk specifically about this story right here, Endless Eight. So I should probably start with a little, context of what Endless Eight is. So Endless Eight is an 8-part story that's in the second season of The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. Now, the melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya is essentially about this club, the school club called the SOS Brigade. They go on a lot of crazy shenanigans where they have to deal with time travel shenanigans, Esper stuff, and alien stuff, all that fun stuff. And basically, Haruhi is the cause of it all because she has like godlike powers, but she doesn't know she has godlike powers. And somehow the main character, who I'm totally can't pronounce his name, so I'm not even gonna try, has helped cause her to bring about a change in the world because Haruhi is really bored with the world as it is and wants to change it drastically, but the main character does not want that to happen. Wants everything to stay as it is, and yeah, it's a fun show. Anyways, I want to specifically talk about Endless Eight though, because like Endless Eight is an absolute masterpiece, maybe one of the best stories of the entire show. Though I doubt the reception for the story was all that great. um, so at first glance, if someone tried to watch Endless Eight, they'll just think, why are they just repeating the same story 8 different times? Because that's what most people would think. And that's a very inaccurate way to look at Endless Eight, and this is the reason why I wanted to talk about it, because like after just sitting down and watching it the other day, I was able to understand what Endless Eight was doing, how I was doing it, why I was doing it, and utterly fascinated me as just a wonderful work of art, and not something that anyone would ever make today, and certainly not something I doubt people didn't enjoy it that much then as now. The reason why most people wouldn't enjoy Endless Eight is because what Endless Eight is. See, with most films, you have a sort of a straightforward narrative, or even if there's a jumping back and forth, there's some sort of kind of cohesive, typical narrative that's sort of, the typical Hollywood kind of movie type situation. Endless Eight don't do that. What Endless Eight decided to do is create the best example of adapting and putting poetry into film. Yes, poetry. That's what Endless Eight is. Endless Eight isn't just an adaptation of a manga story. It's a literal conveying and exploring poetry through film and animation that literally no one has done little to it all, both before and since Endless Eight. And that's why it's such a bloody masterpiece. The story is about them being stuck in a time loop. So they convey the concept of being stuck in a time loop using poetry through repetition, iteration, intonation, and that's just in the vocal stuff. There's also this sort of visual poetry that goes inside with that, because they have to do, although they do the same scenes over and over again, they always shoot it differently. They shoot it at different angles. They reposition every shot from one episode to the next. Nagatoro is sitting down in one episode, but then she's standing up in the next episode. And then on top of that, you have the complete total breakdown of the characters with each realization that they're stuck in a fucking endless loop that starts to weigh them down, and you can hear it in the vocal range, the exhaustion from doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over. And all of this is just conveyed through poetry. And then there's the visual, the visual poetry does there's really crazy cool stuff. Like, for example, because the same scenes are sort of repeated again, sometimes they'll just shoot stuff in the vicinity area, like shots of being close to trees or shots of zoomed in cicadas or whatever, while they're just the people are just the characters are talking about what's going on in their situation at the moment without actually having to show the characters because you already know what they're going to say. And it's a wonderful work of poetry. It's one of the best ever put to film. It's crazy the amount of stuff they're able to pull and actually do in the story, but it's also very understandable why most people would not like it. Because most people would not expect poetry, let alone from like an anime. But that's what they did. And it's a really wonderful work of art because of it. It is a poetical game of telephone. That's the best way I can explain it. You know, they use this game of telephone to tell the same story, but always slightly different because the way what's said changes slightly over time. Like a game of telephone, you know, you say this one thing to one person, they say it to another, etc., etc. So you get that all going on with again this repetition, this rhythm, intonation, and then of course you know the crazy visual stuff, the visual poetry. Like there's a clock, and they show a clock in this one scene, and the clock's ticking, and every time the arm of the clock like ticks up, the camera spins around to convey the idea of the sort of passing of time. And then of course you have times where they just focus on like showing like a plane on the screen, which kind of helps like convey how much the characters just want to get out of there. And then of course, because the repetition of the sequences, there's certain sequences that are repeated that very much convey where the characters are going through. The opening sequence is about a baseball game where the losing team is trying so hard to try and get ahead but failing all the time, and the sort of phrases like, oh, if they could just hold on a little longer, you know, for describing the baseball game, ironically describes the situation the characters are going through at the same time. And then there's the cicadas, because they do this bug hunt chasing after these cicadas, and they basically catch them and then let them release. And there's this great irony of Haruhi saying how once you catch something, you should release them. Well, while the characters are captured in this time loop, but they're not released, so they just can't. So there's this great irony there, and it just gets harder with each time they go through it. And so yeah, it's just a wonderful experiment and just brilliant innovation. Like, it's insane what they're able to do, and the amount of effort and detail they put into it. They did not need to go so hard with this simple time loop story. They could have just done a simple kind of straightforward Groundhog's Day thing, and that would have been it. But they went the extra mile with this, and unfortunately, I think I think I wouldn't be surprised when this original came out that the reaction was probably people feeling like they've been cheated, because they felt like, well, you just did the same thing 8 times instead of actually, you know, just adapting more of the stories. But like, no, that's not what they were doing. Not at all. Yeah, it was just a wonderful work of conveying poetry through film. Because that, you know, once you understand that's what Endless Eight is doing, it's conveying poetry through film, through a game of telephone, exploring the concept of a time loop in that regard, which is just such a fun and crazy way to experiment with a time loop instead of just the typical Groundhog Day type styles of storytelling. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So yeah, just wanted to say, just wanted to talk about this because, like, I sort of crazily binged it all yesterday, and I just, yes, it was so good. I just had to talk about it. I think that'll do for today. So, yeah, see you guys later.